If you want to give your photos a professional touch, then adding texture overlays are a powerful tool to achieve this. They can add drama, grit, and emotion to your image. They can also be used to turn bland images into great results. In this video, I will be using Affinity Photo, but these techniques are compatible with all major software that uses layers. Here we have a pleasant portrait, but the background is bland, dull, and uninteresting. So I'm going to add a texture overlay to improve this. I will do this by going to File and to Place under the File menu. This takes me to my folder, which contains a certain number of textures. Textures can be acquired from lots of sources. The best ones are actually to take them yourself. I've got folders of textures relating to paper, to rust, even to sand, stone, and vegetation. You can buy textures ready-made, or you can create your own. If it's interesting, take a photo of it and use it as a texture. I'll now place this as a new layer above the original portrait. It's landscape aspect, but I can rotate it, I can move it, I can enlarge and reduce it in size. So I will adjust it until it covers the original layer. Now, of course, we can't see what's underneath. The original layer is hidden by the overlay. The way to see through the overlay is to go to the blending option. And you can see as we move down the different options, we get different effects. Be prepared to play around and find what suits you best and what suits this particular image. I've decided to go for a relatively dark background. I can use darken or multiply. These are probably the most commonly used ones. Not only can I do that, but I can also adjust the opacity of the overlay by using the opacity slider. We can now make further adjustments to this overlay texture to improve the appearance. We can do it on an overall basis or on a regional basis. The background is very detailed, so I'm going to add a Gaussian blur because I would like it to be less distinct. It is very much your choice how you want to change your texture. We will adjust the Gaussian blur until the plant life is much less detailed. In my opinion, this is a more pleasant effect, but it is very much to the individual's taste. You will see, though, that the blur has also affected the portrait underneath because it is a top layer. We have pulled the layer into the texture layer, and now it only affects the texture and doesn't affect the initial portrait, which is still sharp. It is now starting to look very good, but the texture is hiding a lot of the model's face. So we will now make some regional adjustments to improve this. If we select texture layer, we will apply a mask. The mask is now within the texture layer and will only affect this texture layer. What we do is we use our paintbrush tool. The texture layer is white, so we use black to conceal the areas that we don't want. We can adjust the opacity of the brush. I tend to start with a low opacity and gradually build up. By painting over the areas that we don't want to be concealed, we are applying a mask and revealing the model's face in more detail. We can adjust the opacity. A higher opacity removes it more quickly. But generally speaking, the best technique is to build it up gradually. As you can see, this has greatly improved the appearance. And we've got a very pleasant looking portrait indeed. We can spend a long time getting this as exact as we want it to be, but for the purposes of this demonstration, we will work quite quickly. I'm now going to draw the eye even more to the center of the image by applying a vignette. In Affinity Photo, we find this under Live Filters. We adjust the sliders to get the effect that we want. We can adjust the aspect of it to give an even effect. I like to make my vignettes quite soft. And now I adjust the scale to the size that suits me best. I'm happy with that. We can see that the vignette has just been applied to the texture overlay, but I'd like it to apply to the whole image, so I will pull it to the top layer. If we switch our layers on and off, we can see the vignette affects the portrait. As well as affecting the texture. I like the results that we have achieved here, so we'll move on to another image. This image has presented a plain background, which is relatively easy to work with, but what happens if we have a dark background? The background for this portrait is quite dark, quite messy. The tonal range is quite similar to the model's hair and dress, so we have more of a challenge here. As before, we will select a texture. To begin with, we will work with the same texture. Use the File Place tool. We place it above the original image. We rotate it to adjust the aspect and the size so that it is covering the whole of the image. Now we use our blend tools to look at the different effects. This time, darken and multiply are actually quite hideous. We get better results if we go down to lighten and screen. We could carry on working with this particular image. We could remove it from the face, but I'm going to try a different textures technique altogether here. This time, I'm going to use a texture overlay to frame the portrait. We open File and Place, and we select this texture. We place it over the image. This time we don't need to rotate it, but we'll adjust it so the effect is evenly spread around the perimeter of the image. As before, the original photo has disappeared, but we use our blend overlays to look at the different effects. We could work on this in several different ways, but I think this time I'll get the best results by using multiply. As you can see, we now have a natural frame around the portrait. We can adjust the opacity as before, but I believe I will keep it to 100%. We have overlay over the skin of the model on the face and shoulder, so I'm going to use a mask to remove this. We apply a mask to the texture overlay layer. We use the paintbrush as before. The mask is white. We're using a black paintbrush to apply the mask. And we paint over the areas that we want to remove. As before, we can adjust the opacity of the brush, and we can gradually build up the effect. We're now getting a lot more clarity to the skin of the model, whilst retaining the outside framing effect. As before, we can look at the before and after by switching off the texture overlay and switching it back on again. In my opinion, we've produced a very strong result here. We've worked mainly with model portraits here, but texture overlays can be used in many images. Landscapes are a very good example. Here we have a very bland washed out sky, which is improved by adding a texture. We can even apply textures to still lifes. We here have a very plain bright edge, which is improved by a subtle texture. You can see that textures are a fast and easy way to add impact to your images. Be prepared to play around, be creative, be inventive. You are in control. You can get the results that you want every time. Good luck.